There are people who exist in your life for years before you understand what they mean to it. Background figures, present but not central, known but not known in the way that matters. People who are there consistently, reliably in the peripheral vision of your daily existence, until one day they say something or do something or look at you in a particular way and the peripheral becomes the center of everything. And you understand with the specific vertigo of that understanding that they were never background at all. They were always the point. My best friend's older brother was that person for me. I had known him for 8 years before he confessed what he confessed. 8 years of Sunday dinners at his family's house. 8 years of his presence in rooms I walked into looking for his sister. 8 years of half conversations and peripheral awareness and the careful management of something I did not want to examine too directly. 8 years. And then one night in September on the back porch of the house where I had spent a significant portion of my adult life, he sat down beside me and said the thing he had never said to anyone. And the 8 years rearranged themselves completely into something that had always been there. Waiting. My name is Kieran Walsh. I was 26 years old. And the man who confessed was named Liam Park. This is everything that happened before and after he did. My best friend's name is Soo-Jin Park. We had been best friends since the second week of our freshman year at Georgia State, when we had been assigned to the same section of an introductory statistics course that neither of us wanted to be taking and had found in our shared misery the beginning of something that had lasted 8 years and showed no signs of stopping. Soo-Jin was everything that made a best friendship work. She was honest in the specific way that is uncomfortable and invaluable simultaneously. She was funny in a way that arrived unexpectedly and hit harder for it. She was the person who showed up at 3 in the morning when things fell apart, at 8 in the morning with coffee when things needed starting, at every significant moment with the presence of someone for whom you are genuinely a priority. She was also the person who brought me into her family. This was not a small thing. The Park family existed in the specific way of Korean American families that have built something real in this country through work and intention, and the daily discipline of people who understand that belonging somewhere requires building it. Her parents, Hannah and David Park, ran a dry cleaning business in the Decatur neighborhood that her father's parents had started and that her parents had expanded. They were warm and practical and the kind of parents who fed anyone who appeared in their house as though feeding people was both pleasure and responsibility. There was also Liam, Soo-Jin's older brother, 4 years older than her, which made him 4 years older than me. 22, when I met him and Soo-Jin in the cafeteria of Georgia State on a Saturday when he was visiting. Sitting across from his sister with a cup of coffee and a book and the specific quality of a person who is comfortable being quiet in company. He looked up when Soo-Jin introduced us. Dark eyes behind rectangular glasses. His mother's Korean features and his father's something else. A grandmother from Galway, Ireland, which was the specific combination that had produced Liam's face and Soo-Jin's face differently and both of them beautifully. He said good to meet you and went back to his book. I thought about him for the rest of that Saturday. This was inconvenient from the beginning. Let me tell you about the 8 years accurately. Not romantically, not in retrospect, as they actually were. Liam Park was a presence in my life the way certain weather is a presence, consistent, sometimes noticed acutely, mostly registered as background until the day it is not there and you understand how much of your environment it had been composing. He was a software engineer, had been since graduating from Georgia Tech 2 years before I met Soo-Jin. He worked for a company in Midtown Atlanta and lived in an apartment in the old 4th Ward neighborhood, close enough to his parents' house to visit regularly and far enough to have his own life. He appeared at Sunday dinners when he was not working. He appeared at family events, birthdays, Chuseok celebrations, the occasional holiday meal that the Parks held with the specific warm inclusivity of a family that understood that chosen people belonged at the table alongside blood ones. I was chosen. I had been attending the Park family Sunday dinners since sophomore year. By junior year I had my own coffee mug in the Park family kitchen cabinet, not purchased for me, simply assigned by the organic process of repeated presence. Liam was there, at the Sunday dinners, at the family events, at the peripheral edges of my friendship with his sister, present and not known in the way I now understand I had always wanted to know him. I will tell you what I noticed. I noticed that he read constantly, not performatively, not for show, but with the specific absorption of someone for whom books are not accessories but necessities. I noticed that he made his mother laugh in a particular way that his father and sister did not, a specific quality of laugh that suggested a shared private humor stretching back decades. I noticed that he was the kind of quiet that is not absence of thought but presence of it. That behind the glasses and the stillness he was paying attention to everything in a room in the way that some people pay attention totally, without announcing it. I noticed that when he looked at me longer than conversations required. I noticed this and I filed it under things I was not going to examine and moved on. I was gay, openly, comfortably, with the specific ease of someone who had come out at 19 and had spent 7 years integrating it into the full texture of their life. It was not the defining fact about me, but it was a fact, present and unremarkable. Liam's orientation was not something I knew. Not because the Park family was not safe. Sujin was one of the first people I had told, and her response had been to hug me and ask if I wanted to talk about it and to never make it anything other than simply part of who I was. The Parks were the Parks. They were safe. But Liam was private in the specific way of people who have built a wall between the interior and the exterior of their life, and maintain it with deliberate attention. He dated, I knew, in the vague way that you know things about the peripheral figures in your life. He had been in a relationship in his mid-20s with a woman named Claire who had appeared at a handful of family events before disappearing. He had not, in 8 years of my observing him, brought anyone to a Sunday dinner. I did not know what this meant. I was careful not to decide. It was the end of summer. The specific quality of Atlanta at the end of summer, the heat breaking at last, the evenings carrying the first suggestion of something cooler coming, the light changing its angle in the way that September light changes after the relentlessness of August. Sujin's parents were celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary, not a large party. The Parks were not large party people. A family dinner, extended. Aunts and uncles and cousins and the few non-blood people who had been at the table long enough to count. I was one of them. The dinner was everything a Park family dinner was. Food in quantities that communicated love in the specific way that Hana Park communicated love, through the act of making enough for more people than were expected, and then being pleased when it was eaten. Conversation that crossed languages and generations. The particular warmth of a family that genuinely enjoys being together. After dinner, the table's energy redistributed, some people to the living room, Sujin's cousin and her husband to help with dishes, the younger cousins to the backyard where there was space. I went to the back porch. I went because the evening was beautiful, the September sky doing what September skis do in Atlanta, a specific deep blue that precedes dark, and because I needed 10 minutes of quiet after several hours of conversation that I had loved and from which I needed to briefly recover. I had been on the porch for perhaps 5 minutes when the back door opened. Liam. He had a glass of water and the book he had been reading before dinner and the expression of someone who had also been looking for 10 minutes of quiet and had found his usual spot occupied. Sorry, he said, I didn't know anyone was out here. Stay, I said, there's room. He looked at me for a moment. Then he sat in the other chair. We were quiet the September evening. The sounds of the family inside, the first cool air of an Atlanta autumn carrying something green and specific. He read his book or appeared to read his book. I sat with my quiet and the evening. At some point I became aware that he was not reading, that the book was open and his eyes were pointed at it and no pages had turned in several minutes. I looked at him. He was looking at me. Not the peripheral version, not the glance of a conversation, looking directly, with the specific quality of someone who has decided to do something they have been not doing for a long time. Kieran, he said. Yeah. A pause long enough to be significant. Can I tell you something, he said, something I haven't told anyone. The evening, the porch, the sounds of 35 years of a family's love through the back door. Yes, I said. He looked at the yard. The Park family backyard was not large. This was a Decatur neighborhood backyard, bounded by the fence his father had built when he and Sujin were children. There was a persimmon tree that had been there since before the Parks moved in and that bore fruit every fall that Hana Park made into something extraordinary. There were string lights along the fence that had been put up for the anniversary, and that made the yard look like something out of a film. Liam looked at the persimmon tree. I've known something about myself, he said, for a long time. I've known it clearly for about 5 years. I haven't said it to anyone because, he stopped, reorganized. Because saying it to anyone in this family felt like changing something I wasn't sure I was ready to change. I held the quiet, did not fill it. I'm gay, he said. 3 words said to the persimmon tree, to the string lights, to the September evening, and to me. I did not say anything immediately, not because I was shocked, not in the way that requires processing, but because I understood in the specific way of someone who has said those same 3 words in their own version of a significant moment that the first response to them matters. Thank you for telling me, I said. He looked at me then, the dark eyes behind the glasses. That's what you said when he stopped. When you said it, I finished. Yes, it felt right then, it feels right now. He held this. You're not surprised, he said. I didn't know, I said honestly. I hoped, in a way I didn't let myself look at directly. Something shifted in his expression. You hoped, he said. The word hanging between us. Liam, I said. Don't, he said, not harshly, the voice of someone who has more to say and needs to say it in order. Let me finish, I need to say all of it. Okay, I said. He looked at the yard again. I've known I was gay since I was 23, he said. I was with Claire, who was a good person who deserved better than someone who was trying to be something he wasn't. I ended it after a year and I've been honest with myself since then. I've been out to myself for 5 years. A pause. And I've been in love with you for 4 of them. The back porch, the September evening, the string lights. What, I said. 4 years, he said. Since the Sunday dinner where you helped my mother with the japchae and you got the glass noodle ratio wrong and she corrected you and you argued with her that you had measured exactly right and she laughed and said measuring wrong is its own kind of right. He paused. I was watching from the doorway and I thought, he stopped. What did you think? I asked very quietly. I thought, I am in love with this person, he said. And I didn't say it. I didn't say it because you are Soo-jin's best friend and Soo-jin is my sister and the worst possible thing I could imagine was ruining what you and she have by making it complicated. And because I didn't know, he stopped again. Whether I would say it back, I said. Yes, he said. I looked at him, at the profile that I had been looking at for 8 years from the corner of my awareness and had never allowed myself to look at directly. What changed tonight? I said. Why tonight? He was quiet for a long moment. My parents, he said, 35 years, and my mother gave a toast tonight. Did you hear it? Yes, I said. She said, the bravest thing your father ever did was tell me what he felt before he knew if I felt it back. And I thought, he looked at me, I thought I have been not brave for 4 years and I am tired of it. I looked at him. 8 years, 4 of them with this information existing on the other side of a dinner table, in the same backyard, in the peripheral vision of my daily life. Liam, I said. Yeah. I stopped, found the words. I have been aware of you for 8 years, in a way that I chose not to examine because you were Soo-jin's brother and because I didn't know and because the friendship was worth more to me than the risk. I paused. But the way I have been aware of you is not the way you are aware of someone in the background. He looked at me. What is it? He said. The way you are aware, I said, of the person you have been trying not to notice. The string lights on the fence, the persimmon tree, the September sky gone fully dark now with the stars doing what stars do. Kieran, he said. Yeah, I said. Say it, he said, the same request I had made, the need to hear it at the volume it deserved. I think I have been in love with you, I said, since longer than 4 years. I just didn't let myself know it. We sat on that porch for another hour, not speaking much. The family inside, the September night outside, and between us the specific altered quality of air that has had something true said into it. When Soo-jin came to find me at 9:30, calling my name through the back door, Liam and I looked at each other. There was the question of what came next, of what the morning would look like, of what the Sunday dinner table would look like, of what Soo-jin, who was my best friend of 8 years and his sister of 30, would make of all of this. These were real questions. They required real answers. But in the moment before Soo-jin's voice reached us, before the world of other people and their necessary involvement came back in, Liam looked at me and I looked at him and we were both, for the first time, simply and completely visible to each other. No management, no peripheral awareness. Just seen, just knowing, just the 8 years rearranged into what they had always actually been. I drove home at 11. The drive from the Park family house in Decatur to my apartment in the Ponce Highland neighborhood was 22 minutes on a good night. I have never been able to tell you how long it took that night because I was not tracking time. I was tracking something else. The replay of the porch, the persimmon tree, the string lights, his voice saying 4 years, his face when I said the thing back, the 8 years rearranged. I parked in my lot and sat in the car. I was 26 years old and I had been out since I was 19 and I had had relationships that were real and several that were not and one that had been significant in the specific way that teaches you about yourself more than about the other person. I was not inexperienced. I was not naive. But I sat in my parking lot at 11:15 and felt the specific quality of someone who has just had their interior landscape reorganized without warning and is sitting in the reorganized version of it, looking around, trying to understand the new geography. The text came at 11:47. From Liam. It said, "I know this is complicated, I don't need it to be anything tonight, I just needed to say it, thank you for hearing it." I looked at the text for a long time. Then I wrote back, "It's complicated because it matters, that's different from it being wrong." A pause, 3 minutes. Then, "Yeah, it is." I went inside, I did not sleep well. The not sleeping was not anxiety or not entirely. It was the specific wakefulness of someone whose mind is doing work that the sleeping hours cannot be spared for. By morning I had done the work. And the work had produced a clarity that surprised me with its cleanness. I was in love with Liam Park. Not as a conclusion I was arriving at, as something I was finally allowing myself to know. The difference between those two things was the whole of what the night had produced. The conclusion had been available for years, the allowing was new. The allowing produced an immediate secondary question. Sujin. There is a specific complexity that exists in the triangle of a best friendship with a sibling. It is not simple. It is not reducible to a single rule or a single conversation. It involves the friendship, the family dynamic, the sibling relationship, and the history of everyone involved. All of which must be navigated with honesty and care and the specific attention of someone who understands that the people they love deserve to be treated as complete human beings rather than variables in a personal equation. I called Sujin on Sunday morning. Not to ask permission. That was not what it was. It was to be honest with my best friend of 8 years before anything developed that she was not aware of. It was to give her the information and the space to have whatever response she had without being surprised by events. She answered on the third ring. "Hey," she said, the Sunday morning voice, coffee and unhurried. "I need to tell you something," I said, "about last night." A pause. "The porch," she said. I stopped. "You saw us," I said. "I saw you both go out separately and neither of you come back in for an hour, and when I came to the back door you both had the expression of people who have just said something significant." A pause. "Kieran, I have been your best friend for 8 years, I know your significant expression." Sujin. "And I have been his sister for 30 years, she said, "I know his." I held this. "How long have you known," I asked, "about him?" "That he was gay since he was 25, she said. "He told me, he didn't tell our parents yet, he will and they'll be fine, you know how they are, but he told me," a pause, "that he had feelings for you since approximately the Japchae Sunday dinner 3 years ago." 4 years ago, I said. "The timeline I'm not certain of," she said, "the fact I'm certain of." I sat with this. "Are you?" I started. "Am I what?" she said. "Are you okay with this?" I asked. "Because you are the most important friendship of my life and I need to know that whatever happens." "Kieran," she said, her voice the specific warmth of someone who has been a best friend long enough to know when a reassurance is genuinely needed. "You are my best friend, he is my brother, you are both people I love completely. If this is what both of you actually want, there is no version of that which makes my life smaller." I felt something release in my chest. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me," she said. "Be careful with each other, both of you." A pause. "He's been carrying this for a long time and you," she stopped. "What about me?" I asked. "You've been looking at him the way you look at him for as long as I can remember," she said. "And pretending you weren't. I have been watching you pretend for years and I did not say anything because it was not mine to say." A brief pause. "It was yours and now you're saying it and I am glad." I stared at my ceiling. You knew, I said. I know everything, she said pleasantly. I'm your best friend, it's my job. I texted Liam after the call with Soo-jin. I told him I had spoken to her, that she was not only okay but had apparently known for a significant period of time. His response was 3 minutes of silence and then, of course she knew, she always knows everything. We met for coffee on Tuesday. Not at the Park family house. Neutral ground, a coffee shop in the Inman Park neighborhood that was busy enough to feel normal and quiet enough to allow a real conversation. He was there when I arrived. The rectangular glasses and the book that he had not actually been reading and the cup of coffee that he held in both hands the way he always held coffee, which was a detail I had noticed and filed in the years before I was allowing myself to notice. I sat across from him. Hi, he said. Hi, I said. We looked at each other across the coffee shop table with the specific quality of two people who have said significant things to each other and are now in the morning after of those things, assessing whether the night produced what they thought it produced. How are you? He asked. I didn't sleep well, I said. You? No, he said. Good, I said. At his expression, I mean good that we're equally affected, not good that you didn't sleep. Something shifted in his face, the almost smile, the one I had been cataloging from the peripheral for years. Kieran, he said. Yeah. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest even if the honest answer is difficult. Okay, I said. Are you here because of what I said on the porch, he said, or are you here because of what you feel? The most important question he could have asked. Both, I said, but the second one is the one that matters. The first one just unlocked the door, what I feel was already there. He looked at his coffee. What do you feel? He asked, the same request as the porch. The need to hear it clearly at this table in daylight outside the September evening and the string lights and the persimmon tree. I feel like I have been aware of you since the first Saturday at Georgia State, I said, and that the awareness has never been simple. And that I have spent 8 years being very careful not to look at it directly because looking at it directly required either acting on it or accepting that I wasn't going to, and both of those options were frightening. I paused. And that the porch gave me the courage to look at it directly. And what I see when I look directly is, I stopped. What? He said quietly. Something I have wanted for a long time, I said, without letting myself want it. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he picked up his coffee. Okay, he said, tell me what you want, not the general version, the specific. I want to know you, I said, properly, not the peripheral version, not the Sunday dinner version. I want to know what you actually think about things, what the book is, what you were like at 16 in the Park family kitchen when I wasn't there yet. I paused. I want the version of you that exists when you stop being careful about what you show. He held his cup. That version is less polished, he said. Good, I said, I'm tired of polished. The almost smile became the full one. The first time I had seen it directed at me without the peripheral distance. I registered with the specific clarity of someone seeing something correctly for the first time, the best thing I had seen directed at me in recent memory. Okay, he said. Okay, I said. We stayed in that coffee shop for 3 hours. He told me about being 16 in the Park family kitchen, about the specific quality of silence he had maintained for 5 years about who he was, and the specific cost of that silence, which was not dramatic but was real and cumulative in the way that unspoken things accumulate. He told me about Claire and what it had cost her and what it had cost him, and the specific shame of having been unable to be what someone who loved him needed. He told me all of this over 3 hours in a coffee shop in Inman Park, and I listened the way I listen to things that matter, with full attention, without filling the spaces, without managing his telling of it into something comfortable. And when he finished I said, thank you for telling me the hard parts, and he said, you're the first person I've told the hard parts to, and I understood then what the coffee shop was. It was not a date, it was not the beginning of romance. It was the beginning of being known, and being known, really known, the hard parts included, was the thing that both of us had been waiting for and had not found. Until now, until a back porch in September and a coffee shop on Tuesday, until the courage his mother's toast had given him, until the confession that rewrote the 8 years. Fall. Atlanta in fall is not Vermont or New England. It does not perform for the cameras with dramatic color and crisp air. Atlanta's fall is subtler, a gradual moderation, the mornings becoming something other than summer, the light changing its angle, the city softening at the edges in the specific way of a place that has been hot for too long and is grateful for the change. Liam and I built something in the fall. Slowly, deliberately, with the specific care of two people who both understood that the foundation was complicated: the best friendship with his sister, the family involvement, the 8 years of peripheral awareness that needed to be replaced by something that was not peripheral at all, and who both understood that the complication was worth the care it required. We did not rush. This was both of our natures. He was the person who was quiet in company because he was paying attention to everything in it. I was the person who had spent 8 years filing things under categories I was not ready to open. We were both, in our different ways, people who processed before acting. So we processed. We had coffee on Tuesdays, which became a Tuesday morning before work habit that neither of us formalized but both of us maintained. We texted in the evenings with the specific low-stakes exchange of two people discovering the texture of each other's daily lives. He recommended books, not casually, but with the attention of someone who had been paying attention to what I responded to and was curating accordingly. I learned things about him. He had been afraid of the confession for 5 years. Not the coming out. He had made his peace with who he was, had been honest with himself and with Sujin, had been building the life that was actually his rather than the performed version. The coming out to his parents was still pending, was something he was approaching with the deliberate care of someone who knew they were loved, and wanted to give the love they received the best possible conditions to extend itself. He had been afraid of the confession to me specifically because of what losing it would have meant. If you had said it back wrong, he said, if the friendship had. Had you considered, I said, that it might go the way it actually went? Occasionally, he said, I didn't let myself consider it often, because hope is more painful than no hope when the thing doesn't happen. I understood this. When did you start hoping? I asked. He was quiet. The Sunday dinner 2 years ago, he said. When you had an argument with my father about something architectural, I can't even remember what, and you were wrong and you argued anyway, and then when he proved you wrong you laughed and said you were absolutely wrong and you knew it the whole time. He paused. And I thought, that is the most appealing quality in a person, the ability to be wrong gracefully. I looked at him. That was the moment you started hopping, I said. That was the moment I stopped pretending there was no hope to start, he said. October. Liam told his parents. Not because of me, or not only because of me, he had been ready for longer than the September porch. The readiness had been building for years. The September porch had perhaps accelerated a timeline that was already moving, but the decision was his and it was made for his own reasons as much as for ours. He told them on a Sunday. The specific Sunday that I was not at dinner, he had asked me not to be, not because he did not want my support but because he needed this to be his and his family's before it was also mine. I respected this completely. He called me at 9:30 that evening. How did it go? I asked. My mother cried, he said, not badly, the good kind of crying, the kind that means something has been seen. A pause. She said she had been worried that he was lonely, that she had seen something in him for years that she could not name, and that now she understood what it was. Your father? I asked. My father said, he stopped, his voice had something in it. My father said, I love you, the same as yesterday, the same as tomorrow. I held the phone. Liam, I said. I know, he said, his voice rough. The same as yesterday, I said, the same as tomorrow. Yes, he said. We stayed on the phone for a long time after that, not talking much, just present. The specific value of a person who is there on the other end of the line when you have just been given something you were afraid to ask for and found it fully given. November. The first Sunday dinner after Liam told his parents. The first one where the whole truth was present at the table. Hana Park had made japchae. I saw it on the counter when I arrived and understood immediately that it was not accidental. That this dish, the one from the dinner where Liam said he had fallen in love with me, had been chosen with the specific intentionality of a mother who pays attention. I looked at her when I came into the kitchen. She looked at me. She said, in the warm, direct way of someone who has thought about what she wants to say and has decided that directness is the kindest form, he has been happier this fall than I have seen him in years. I know, I said. That is because of you, she said. It's because of him, I said. I didn't do anything except hear what he said. She looked at me for a moment. Hearing is not nothing, she said. Hearing is everything. She handed me the japchae spoon. You still measure wrong, she said. I know, I said. Measure wrong, she said, the way you always do. I felt something in my chest. Mrs. Park, I said. Hannah, she said with finality. She had asked me to call her Hannah when I was a sophomore, and I had never quite been able to bring myself to do it. The formality felt insufficient gratitude for the place I had been given at the table. Hannah, I said. She nodded, as if something had been confirmed that she had been waiting to confirm. The dinner. Liam arrived at 6:15. He came into the kitchen and he saw me with the japchae spoon, and he looked at the dish and then at me and then at his mother, who was attending to something on the stove with her back to us and perfect hearing. He looked at me with the dark eyes. I looked back. Something in the looking that required no words, the specific communication of two people who have built enough between them that the eyes are sufficient. He sat at the table. I sat beside him, not across, beside. David Park came in and sat at the head of the table. He looked at his son, he looked at me, he said nothing, he picked up his chopsticks. And dinner happened. The normal, extraordinary dinner of a family that loves each other and feeds each other and interrogates each other and laughs at the same things they have been laughing at for 30 years. The cousins arguing, Hannah correcting everyone's technique, Sujin telling a story about something at work that had everyone at the table responding. And Liam beside me, present, not performed, the unmanaged version. The one that existed when he stopped being careful about what he showed. Under the table his hand found mine briefly, not dramatic, not announced, the quiet private gesture of someone saying, I am here, I chose this, I am still here. I held it for a moment. Then we ate dinner. The confession had been in September. By December it had been 4 months. 4 months of Tuesday coffees and evening texts and Sunday dinners and the slow, careful building of something real. Real enough to be tested. The test came in the form of an offer. Liam's company offered him a position in their Seattle office, senior engineer, significant advancement, the kind of offer that would have been, a year earlier, an easy yes for someone who had not yet been standing on a back porch in September. He told me on a Tuesday. He put it on the table between our coffee cups and looked at me with the expression of someone who has not yet decided what they want to decide and is being honest about the undecidedness. When do you need to give them an answer? I asked. 2 weeks, he said. I looked at the offer letter on the table. What do you want to do? I asked. I don't know, he said. That is the truth. A year ago this would have been a clear yes. Now he stopped. Now there are things worth keeping in Atlanta, I said. Yes, he said. I looked at him. Liam, I said, I am not going to tell you to stay. That is not a decision I get to make, and it is not a decision that should be made based on 4 months of something that is still finding its shape. But, he said. But I said, I want you to know that whatever is here is real, and that real things can survive distance if they are built well enough. And that this, I gestured between us, the gesture that meant the Tuesday coffees and the evening texts and the Sunday dinners and the September porch and all of it. This is built on something that does not require a specific geography to be true. He looked at me. You would do the distance, he said. I would do what the real thing requires, I said. That is different from saying I want the distance. I don't want the distance, but I want you to make the choice that is right for you. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Can I tell you what the right choice for me is? Yes, I said. The right choice for me, he said, is the one where I stop being the person who leaves the things worth keeping. He looked at me directly. I've been offered a position in Atlanta, same company, different team, less advancement, more of what I have here. A pause. I asked about it last week. I stared at him. You already. I needed to know the option existed before I told you about Seattle, he said. Because I didn't want the decision to look like I was staying because there was no alternative. I wanted it to look like what it is. Which is what, I said. A choice, he said, made freely for the right reasons. I looked at him across the coffee shop table. The rectangular glasses, the book on the table beside his cup, the man who had been in the peripheral vision of 8 years of my life and was now, irrevocably, in the center of it. Liam, I said. Yeah. You are the most deliberate person I have ever met, I said. Is that a criticism? He said. It is the opposite of a criticism, I said. He picked up his coffee. I'm staying, he said, simply. I know, I said. You knew before I said it, he said. I knew when you told me you'd already looked into the Atlanta option, I said, before you told me about Seattle. He looked at me. You pay attention, he said. I have been paying attention to you for 8 years, I said. I'm quite good at it by now. The almost smile, the full smile, the one that arrived rarely and took over his face and that I had been cataloging from the peripheral for years and was now, finally, seeing directed at me from the center. March. The persimmon tree in the Park family backyard was doing what persimmon trees do in early spring, putting out the first tentative leaves, the tree's annual argument that winter is finished and the year is beginning again. Sunday dinner. The full table, Hannah and David at the heads, Sujin with her boyfriend who had been attending for 6 months and had been assessed and accepted with the specific Park family efficiency that reserved judgment for approximately one dinner before rendering it, the aunts, the cousins, the neighbor Mrs. Kim who had been coming to Park family dinners since Sujin was 7. And Liam beside me. As he had been beside me since November. The dinner was the dinner, the food, the conversation, the specific warm noise of a family that likes being together and is not shy about showing it. After dinner, as the table redistributed, I went to the back porch. Old habit, the first place I always went. Liam came out a minute later. Old habits, he said. The porch is good, I said. He sat in his chair, I sat in mine. The March evening, which was warmer than September had been, carrying the first real warmth of the year. The persimmon tree, the string lights taken down after the anniversary and put back up because Hannah had decided she preferred the yard with them, the sounds of the family inside. This is where it started, he said. Yes, I said. 6 months ago, he said. Approximately. He looked at the persimmon tree. I was terrified, he said, that night. I had been building up to it for weeks and then my mother gave the toast about my father being brave enough to say it before he knew how it would be received and I thought, he stopped. You thought be brave, I said. I thought the worst thing that happens is it goes wrong, he said, and the worst thing that happens if I don't say it is that nothing ever changes, he paused. The second worst thing was worse than the first. I looked at him. I'm glad you chose the first, I said. So am I, he said. He reached over. He took my hand. The March evening, the persimmon tree, the string lights, the sounds of 35 years and counting of a family that loved each other. And his hand in mine, not the hospital grab of a drowning person, not the unconscious reach of someone half asleep. The fully conscious, fully chosen, fully intentional hand of someone who had decided, on a September evening when his mother's toast gave him the courage to stop being afraid. Kieran, he said. Yeah. I love you, he said, out loud on the porch in the March evening to me. Not whispered, not confessed in the specific dramatic register of a thing said for the first time, said simply, as a fact, as the natural conclusion of 6 months of building something real. I looked at him. I love you too, I said. I think I have for longer than either of us knows. He squeezed my hand. The persimmon tree put out its first leaves. The spring began.